I think that if we continue to cultivate the idea of giving back, giving first, of taking care of each other, and if we cultivate that in the streets of our own community, we can't help but do that, outside in the county, in the state, and wherever our children go. If we give them if we give that to them as a gift, and we say that this is what we're about.
The idea was, when we got together to start the foundation, was to create an entity where private individuals could freely give their own money into an organization that would do projects for the city of Longmont that were separate from things that were going on in the government.
Tom Brock, the late Tom, who was a CPA, talked with us many times about developing a local foundation of our own. And eventually that came to pass. So we were really glad to participate in getting it underway, and we felt it meant a great support for a lot of good needs.
Fairly early on, the Community Foundation, while it was part of the Community Foundation for Northern Colorado, got involved in the Betcher Grant program, where the Betcher Foundation was going to make a matching grant if the foundation here raised a certain amount of money. I think it was $500,000 or something. And so Virginia Holmes invited all the attorneys and I believe all the accountants in town to a breakfast presentation out at the Fox Hill Country Club. I was one of the ones invited. At the time, I had been charged by a client, one of whose directors had just died, to set up a memorial scholarship fund for that director.
The founders were the people that I met when I first came in. Stu Golden, the Holmes, Jay Holmes, as well as his parents. Fran McCarty has been, and it continues to be fabulous. She's a board member, what's the word? When you're a professor and you're no longer active, you're
emeritus?
Yeah, she's a board member emeritus.
Okay. Well, as a founder, and I believe that the foundation should, that Longmont should have a foundation. Somebody put the idea in my head, among others. And we started out trying to figure out how to make a foundation. And so today, I don't know whether that answers your question or not, but we just wanted to make Longmont a better place and a vehicle to improve the community by giving grants and so forth.
Helen, Bruce, Fickle, and I decided now was the time, and that was the year of 1994, to restart the foundation. And it has been the major project of my many years. And it's also been wonderful to be able to contribute to all the many charities.
I decided to run for mayor, which I did, and won a 2-year term in 1993 and won 3 subsequent terms, so finished 8 years in 2001. And prior to that, I attended a meeting at the library about the possibility of starting a community foundation. So I think I was actually at one of the very first meetings. And at that time, I think what I found so exciting was the possibility of having a group that could fill in the lean budgets of all the many wonderful nonprofits in the community. And we can't survive without the nonprofits. So it's sort of my history, and I really have been a cheerleader for this wonderful community.
Well, we lost a son at 20 years old, and always wanted to think of something that we could do in his memory. And when we became familiar with this organization, we thought that is really the perfect memorial for him. He would have been interested in many of the organizations that they support. It's a community-wide organization, and that was our primary interest. And beyond that, it was really what could be done in this community.
I caught my neighbor, Virginia Holmes, who is one of the early birds in this community foundation thing, down by my mailbox, and I said, Virginia, how do you get involved in this community foundation? Because I had heard the concept, knew that it was in town, and that they were beginning to build a foundation. And she was kind of startled, but she said, well, gosh, she didn't really want to invite me to join the board, but she said you could join an asset development committee. So I went to a couple meetings, then they asked me to join the board. The board at that time consisted of 5 families: the Gaddises, the McCartys, the Goldens, the Lehmans, and the Holmes. And so it was kind of a family thing here in Longmont. But they invited me to join. Well, when I joined, I looked at the bylaws and it said they could have 12 board members if they wanted them. I said, this board's too small. And they said, well, who do you think we ought to ask? So I gave them 4 names: Noble, Cornet, Plaster, and Chapman. And by golly, they all joined the board. And that's when the board went from this little family thing to, I think, a little more community.
The opportunity that came up to be part of the Longmont Community Foundation about 11 years ago, and it was an easy decision because it was all about the community and not about promoting or branding my organization. So it was an opportunity to give back. It was an opportunity to provide some support that in turn would support the wonderful nonprofits that serve our area, serve our community.
Why I'm involved personally in the Longmont Community Foundation, I have the dream job. I'm the executive director of the Longmont Community Foundation, which means we help, or I help, connect people who care with causes that matter. Which means to me, I think that means really, what do you want to change in Longmont? What do you want to preserve in Longmont? And I think the way I think of it is that if your goal is to help people become self-sufficient and obtain access to food and clothing and shelter and basic needs, that's what the Longmont Community Foundation is for. We're here for that today, and we're here for that tomorrow. So you can make sure that this community continues to be vibrant, to be engaging, to be a kind and caring community, and that's the privilege that I have, being the foundation director.
Jack Wolf was somebody who was on the board of the Community Foundation, and he had a client who had said he was going to give his money to the state. And Jack convinced him that maybe we could use that money here in Longmont. And that was a couple named Howard and Mary Allen, who Mary had been very active at the Hour Center. And again, they were very unassuming, quiet family, very Catholic, wanted their money to